14 years. That's how long a man can live with a ghost in his head before he stops trying to outrun it. My name is Jeremiah Holloway. Folks who knew me before the war called me Jed. Most of those folks are dead now. The rest don't speak my name above a whisper. Every month on the first Monday, I rode into Stillwater and walked into the Wells Fargo office on Main Street. I handed $12 in silver coin to a clerk named Pemberton. He counted it twice. He always counted it twice. Then he wrote out a money order to a woman named Marigold Dawson at a boarding house in Carson City. She had never spent a single coin. I knew this because Pemberton told me once, 6 months in. Said the bank in Carson City had reported back. The money sat in an account untouched. Marigold Dawson refused to claim it. But she also refused to send it back. She let it sit there. Like ammunition in a gun, she hadn't decided whether to fire. That morning, the morning everything changed, Pemberton looked up at me with those tired old eyes and said, "Another month, Mr. Holloway?" I nodded. Set the coins on the counter. He counted them twice. Outside, the Nevada sun was already climbing, heat coming off the dirt road in waves. My buckskin horse stood tied to the post, tail flicking at flies. I checked the saddlebags. Hardtack, coffee, a tin of beans. Enough to last 3 days if I rationed. I didn't have anywhere to be in 3 days. I didn't have anywhere to be ever again. That was the thing about being a drifter. The desert didn't ask where you were going. It only asked if you were ready to keep moving. I swung up into the saddle and pointed the horse north. Behind my eyes, the ghost was already waiting. His name was Tobias Reed. He was a sergeant in the Union Cavalry, 12th Illinois. He was 34 years old. He had a wife back in Springfield and a daughter who was learning to read. He carried a folded letter from that daughter in his breast pocket. The letter had a drawing of a cat on it. I was 29 then, a lieutenant. Tobias was my sergeant, but he was also the closest thing to a father I'd had since my own died of consumption when I was 12. Tobias taught me how to read a man's eyes before he drew, how to ration water in a long ride, how to write a letter to a widow without sounding like you were lying. April 6, 1862, the peach orchard at Shiloh. We'd been cut off from the main body, maybe 24 of us, pinned down by Confederate infantry coming in from 3 sides, ammunition running low. Tobias made the call. He stood up with both hands raised, threw down his rifle. "We surrender," he called out. "We surrender." The Confederates stopped firing. A man walked out from the tree line. Tall, lean, a scar running diagonal across his face from his temple to his jaw. He walked right up to Tobias, looked him in the eye. Then he raised his pistol and put a round through Tobias Reed's forehead. Then he smiled. I was 20 feet away. My rifle was empty. My pistol was on the ground beside a dead corporal. By the time I reached for it, the moment was gone. Tobias was on his back in the dirt. His daughter's letter was still in his breast pocket. I never forgot the scar. Never forgot the smile. His name was Cyrus Vance. They called him the Reaper. After the war, he disappeared into the territories. Last I heard, he was hiring his gun out to anyone who could pay. I rode west to forget him. I rode west to forget Tobias. I rode west because Springfield was full of widows and orphans, and I couldn't look any of them in the eye. I ended up in Nevada. Took work as a foreman on the Renwick Cattle Company. Augustus Renwick owned 10,000 acres and half the politicians in Carson City. He paid well and asked few questions. I rebuilt my life one fence post at a time. Then a boy named Tobias Reed Jr. came to work for me. He was 16 years old, skinny as a fence rail. He had his great-uncle's eyes. His aunt had sent him west to find me. She had taken the boy in after the cholera took his folks 2 winters before. She was Tobias Reed's daughter, grown into a widow herself. She knew I had been with her father at Shiloh. She thought maybe I could give the boy a place to start, a man to learn from. I tried to send him home. Told her in a letter the West was no place for a boy that young. She wrote back and said the boy had nowhere else. Said he had been quiet ever since the funeral. Said he needed somewhere to put his hands to work before he forgot how. So I took him on. taught him the same way Tobias had taught me. How to read tracks, how to handle a horse in rough country, how to listen before he spoke. 2 years ago, in the autumn of 1874, I sent him out on a routine patrol with two older hands. They were checking the northern range for stray cattle. Only the two older hands came back. They said Tobias Jr. had ridden ahead into a draw, said they heard a single rifle shot. By the time they got there, the boy was face down in the dirt with a bullet in his back. They claimed it was a stray round from a hunter. They claimed they tracked the hunter for half a day before losing him in the rocks. I didn't believe them, but I couldn't prove anything. Renwick blamed me, said I had been careless, said I should have known the northern range was dangerous that time of year. He fired me on the spot, took back the cabin he'd given me, took back the horse. I left with the clothes on my back, my Colt revolver, my Winchester rifle, and a saddle I'd bought with my own money. I wrote Marigold Dawson a letter. I told her how the boy she had raised as her own had died. I told her it was my fault. I told her I would send what I could. She never wrote back. But every month for 2 years I sent $12. And every month she let it sit in the bank in Carson City, untouched, waiting. That morning, riding north out of Stillwater, I had no plan, no destination. The desert was wide and empty and forgiving in the way only empty places can be forgiving. It didn't ask you to apologize, it only asked you to keep breathing. By mid-afternoon, I was 40 miles north of town, riding along a high ridge above a dry wash. The ridge ran maybe a mile, then dropped off into broken country full of arroyos and sage. I knew this land. I'd run cattle through it back when I worked for Renwick. The sun was sliding toward the western mountains. Maybe 4 hours of light left. I was thinking about nothing in particular. Watching a hawk circle on a thermal. Listening to my horse's hooves on the loose stone. Then I heard it. A woman's voice. Below me. In the wash. She wasn't screaming. That was the thing that caught me. A screaming woman, you'd expect. But this was something else. A low, ragged sound, somewhere between a sob and a curse, in a language I didn't understand. I pulled the horse to a stop, eased forward to the edge of the ridge. She was running. A woman in a torn deerskin dress, dark hair loose down her back, stumbling through the sage. Her legs were bleeding. One shoulder of the dress was ripped open, and I could see bruises blooming on her skin like dark flowers. She was barefoot. She was running like someone who had been running for days, on nothing but will. Behind her, maybe half a mile back, dust rose from the trail. 2 riders, moving slow, patient, the way hunters move when they know the prey is finished. I had a choice to make. I could turn the horse around and ride south, pretend I hadn't seen anything. The desert was full of trouble that wasn't mine. A drifter survives by minding his own business. Or I could go down there. I sat in the saddle for maybe 10 seconds. The wind moved across the ridge. The hawk kept circling. Then I touched my heels to the buckskin and started down. She heard me coming and stopped, turned. Her eyes went wide and her hand came up like she might throw something, though her hands were empty. I pulled up 20 feet away, kept both hands visible, slow movements, the way you approach a wounded animal. She stood there, chest heaving, maybe 5.5 feet tall, late 20s. Her face was streaked with dirt and dried tears, but underneath, I could see she had been beautiful once. Not the kind of beautiful that fades, the kind that gets harder and sharper as the years grind down on it. When she spoke, her voice came out cracked and hollow. Cowboy. That was all at first. Just that one word. Then she said, "Are you like the others? Do you only want my body before you kill me?" The question hit me in the chest like a slug from a .44. I had heard that tone before. In field hospitals, in farmhouses burned by raiders. It was the sound of someone who had lost everything and expected nothing but more pain. I swung down from the saddle, slow, made sure she could see my hands. "No," I said, "I'm not that kind of man, but the men chasing you are." She stared at me a long time. searching my face for the lie. I let her look. After what she had been through, she had every right to distrust. Finally, her shoulders dropped a fraction. Not trust, just exhaustion winning out over fear. "How many?" I asked. "How far back?" "2. Rifles and pistols. Maybe 30 minutes. I scanned the trail behind her. The dust cloud was still distant but growing. "There's a line shack on the ridge above us," I said. "Old one. Walls are thick. One window. It'll do for tonight. You can ride?" "Yes." "Then come on." She hesitated. Every instinct in her was screaming not to trust another man. I understood. I held out my hand and waited. She took it. Her grip was weak. Her body trembled when she settled behind me on the saddle. But she held on. That told me something. She wasn't broken yet. We rode up the ridge. The shack was where I remembered it. 4 walls of weathered timber. A door that still hung straight. One window facing the approach. It had been built 30 years ago by a sheep man who died in a blizzard. Nobody had bothered to tear it down. I helped her off the horse. She was unsteady, but she made it to the door under her own power. Inside, the air was stale and dry. A cot against one wall, a small stone hearth, an old tin lantern hanging from a nail. I went straight to work. Old habits from the war. I positioned the Winchester by the window, checked the lever action. Smooth. I tested the door hinges. Solid. Looked for a back exit. There wasn't one. That cut both ways. They couldn't surprise us from behind, but if they fired the place, we couldn't run. I came back to her. "What's your name?" "Nalia." "I'm Jed. Now tell me why those men are chasing you." She sat on the cot, pulled an old blanket around her shoulders. When she spoke, her voice stayed steady, though her hands shook in her lap. "They killed my husband 3 days ago. Kuruk. He was a hunter. We have a small band south of here. Maybe 40 people. What's left after the sickness? Why did they kill him? They wanted a silver necklace and a map. They asked him over and over. He told them nothing. They shot him anyway. Do you have the necklace?" She looked at her empty hands. "I don't know what I have. They searched me. They searched our lodge. They searched everything. They found nothing. I escaped that night and I've been running since." I filed that away. Men didn't chase a woman 50 miles across the desert just for revenge. They were after something. Something worth killing for. I went to the window. The 2 riders were closer now, a quarter-mile out and climbing the slope of the ridge below. The sun caught the lead rider's face. The scar. Diagonal. Temple to jaw. The world tilted under my feet. I'd seen that scar in 14 years of dreams. I'd seen it every time I closed my eyes and tried not to remember Shiloh, Cyrus Vance, the Reaper, riding up the ridge toward the line shack with his brother Eli at his side. Of all the women in the territory, of all the riders he could be chasing, Cyrus Vance had ended up here. With me. Some men would have called it bad luck. I didn't believe in luck anymore. I believed in debts. And I believed the desert was finally calling mine in. I turned back to Nalia. "You don't know who's hunting you," I said. "But I do. And the man with the scar killed my sergeant 14 years ago in a peach orchard in Tennessee. Shot him after he surrendered. Smiled while he did it." Her eyes met mine. Something passed between us. 2 people carrying ghosts of the same shape. "What does that mean for us?" she asked. I checked my Colt. 6 rounds. The Winchester held 12. 18 shots against 2 professionals who had been killing for a living since the war. "It means," I said, "that this just got personal." Outside, Cyrus Vance reined in his horse 200 yards from the shack. I watched him through the window. He was older now, gray at the temples. But the scar was the same. The smile was the same. His voice carried across the dry air, rough as gravel scraping stone. "I know you're in there, Holloway." The shock of my name in his mouth went through me like a knife. He knew. He had known I was coming. "Send out the woman," he called, "and maybe we let you ride south, old time's sake." I didn't answer. Talking would only confirm numbers and position. "We'll be here in the morning, Holloway," he said after a while. "Sleep light." I heard them ride back down the slope, setting up to wait. The sun dropped lower. I lit no lantern. Nalia sat against the wall with the blanket around her. I sat by the window with the rifle across my knees. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The wind came up after dusk. It moved through the cracks in the shack like a low whistle. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote called and another answered. Nalia finally broke the silence. Her voice was quiet. My husband used to say, "When a soul has not yet left this world, you can see it in a star that burns brighter than the others." I looked through the window. The sky was full of stars now, the kind of sky you only get in the desert when there's no moon. One star low on the eastern horizon did seem brighter. I didn't believe in souls hanging around after death. I'd seen too many men die. None of them had stuck around long enough to make a difference. But I didn't say that. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, slow, in the dark. Somewhere past midnight, I heard gravel shift outside the eastern wall. I rolled to a firing position below the window, eased the Winchester up. Through a knothole in the timber, I saw a shape moving along the wall, low, a knife in his hand. Eli Vance, I figured. The faster brother sent to test the door. I fired once through the wood. Didn't aim to kill, just enough to let them know I was awake. A curse in the dark. Footsteps retreating fast across loose stone. Then, from farther off, the older brother's voice, calm, almost amused. "You're slipping, old man. Time was you'd have hit him." My blood went cold for the second time that day. It wasn't a guess. He had said my name twice now. He had been told, by someone who knew exactly where I was. Someone in Stillwater had sold me out. I stayed by the window for the rest of the night. Nalia slept in pieces. She would drift off and wake with a small, sharp breath, then look around to see where she was, then settle again. Once, near dawn, she shifted on the cot, and the blanket slid off her shoulder. The neckline of her deerskin dress fell open a few inches. The first gray light of morning was coming through the window. It caught something in the inner lining of the dress, low against her collarbone. A glint, not silver, cloth. Then I saw it, stitched into the inner seam of the dress, a small square of pale fabric. There were letters on it, small and dark. 3 letters in English script. EMW, not Apache markings, not a tribal symbol. Initials. I didn't say anything. She pulled the blanket back up in her sleep, but a question had planted itself in my mind, and it wasn't going to leave. Nalia, daughter of an Apache chief. Whose initials was she carrying against her heart? Outside, the eastern sky began to pale. The shapes of the rocks below the ridge came back into the world. I could see Cyrus and Eli's horses now, tied off in a hollow 200 yards south. The 2 brothers themselves were gone. That worried me more than anything else that had happened. A man like Cyrus Vance didn't quit. He adapted, he went for help, and he came back harder. We had maybe a few hours before he returned with more guns than I had bullets. I turned from the window. "Nalia!" She came awake at once, eyes already alert. "We can't stay here." She didn't argue. She just nodded and started gathering herself off the cot. I checked the Winchester. I checked the Colt. I tightened the cinch on the buckskin outside. The sun cleared the eastern ridge. The desert lit up gold and red. Somewhere ahead of us, in the broken country to the north, was a man I didn't yet know was waiting for me. His name was Obadiah Finch, and he had been looking for me for 6 months. We rode out at first light. I kept us off the trail, took the buckskin down through a narrow draw that cut north between 2 low ridges. Nalia rode behind me, both arms around my waist. She weighed almost nothing. 3 days of running on no food had hollowed her out. The buckskin was a good horse, sure-footed in rough country, but he wasn't built for double weight over long miles. I figured we had maybe 4 hours of hard riding before he gave out. We needed to make those hours count. The sun climbed. The shadows shortened. By mid-morning, we were 10 miles north of the shack, picking our way through a stretch of country full of broken lava rock and old dry washes. Hard country, slow country. Country where 2 riders couldn't easily follow without leaving themselves wide open. I was counting on that. About an hour past noon, we stopped at a seep where a thin trickle of water came out of the rock. I helped Nalia down. She drank from her cupped hands, then washed the worst of the blood off her legs. She didn't flinch. She didn't make a sound. She just worked at the dried blood with the steady patience of a woman who had cleaned worse wounds before. I let the horse drink and watched the country behind us. No dust, no movement. For now. Nalia straightened up and turned to me. Her hand was at her chest, where the deerskin dress lay against her collarbone. Her eyes were strange. "Jed, what is it?" "There's something in the lining of my dress." She turned away, a small private movement, and worked her fingers into the inner seam. I heard the faint sound of stitching tearing. When she turned back, she was holding a silver chain. The pendant on the chain was small, hammered silver, with a crude eagle stamped into it. "The seal of her father's band," she said quietly. Then she held up a second thing. A tiny pouch of soft leather, no bigger than a thumb, sewn shut with neat small stitches. She broke the stitches with her teeth. Inside the pouch was a folded square of deerskin. She opened it carefully. It was a map. Crude, burned into the leather with a hot needle, but I could read it. Ridges, a creek, a mine entrance marked with a small X. To the north of the X, a notation in English, 3 numbers. The numbers were a date, July 4th, 1867. I knew that date. It was the date Augustus Renwick had filed his original mining claim with the territorial office in Carson City. 9 years ago. Renwick had thrown a small party at his ranch that summer to celebrate. Champagne shipped in from California. He had told everyone the claim was a small one. 20 acres of low-yield rock. 20 acres. Low yield. I looked at the map again. The X wasn't 20 acres of low-yield rock. The X was on the northern edge of land that, by treaty, belonged to the Apache. He had been mining it for 9 years. Nalia was watching my face. "What does it mean?" she asked. "It means your husband died trying to get this to a federal marshal," I said. "He stitched it into your dress the night before they came. He hid it on the one person they wouldn't think to search a second time, and he didn't tell you. So if they took you, you couldn't tell them where it was." She was quiet for a long time. Then her hand closed around the pendant, hard enough that her knuckles went white. "He died protecting me by lying to me. He died protecting you by trusting you to live." She looked away, out across the broken rock. Her shoulders shook once, just once. Then she straightened. She put the chain around her neck under the deerskin. She tucked the map back into the leather pouch and put it in a small pocket at her belt. "All right," she said. "Now we go to the marshal." I nodded. I helped her back onto the horse. We had not gone half a mile when an old man came around a boulder on a gray horse with both hands raised. I had the Winchester out before I knew I'd done it. "Easy, Jeremiah," he said. "I've been looking for you for 6 months." He was past 60, white whiskers down to his collar, a weathered face under a flat-brimmed hat. He wore an old Union Army coat with the insignia cut off, the kind a lot of men wore after the war, the kind I wore for years before I finally got rid of mine. "I don't know you," I said. "You did once. A long time ago. April '62. Tennessee." I lowered the rifle a fraction. "My name's Obadiah Finch," he said. "I was a corporal in the 12th Illinois under Sergeant Tobias Reed. I was 20 feet from him when Cyrus Vance shot him. I was 20 feet from you when you couldn't reach your pistol. The desert went still around me. I had been one of 7 men who survived that day. I had never tried to find any of them. They had never tried to find me. There was nothing any of us could say to each other that wasn't a wound. "Why now?" I said. Obadiah Finch sat on his gray horse and watched me with eyes that had seen too much for one life. "Because I worked 12 years for Augustus Renwick," he said, "and I helped him bury 12 men in a ravine. And I can't go to my grave without doing one honest thing first." We rode together for the next 2 hours. Obadiah on the gray horse, me and Nalia on the buckskin. The country opened up some as we moved north, and we made better time. He talked as we rode. Slow, steady. The way a man talks when he has rehearsed the words for a long time alone. He had taken work at the Renwick Cattle Company in 1864, right after the war. Like a lot of men, he had been broken by what he'd seen, and he wanted hard, simple work in a place far from home. Renwick paid well, asked few questions. He started mining around 67, Obadiah said. Small operation at first, 2 men with picks. He sold the gold in San Francisco through a broker and put the money into more land. And the workers? Apache. He hired them off the reservations, paid them less than half what he paid white hands. Some of them figured out where the gold was coming from. Some of them didn't. What happened to the ones who figured it out? Obadiah was quiet a long moment. There's a ravine, 2 miles north of the main house, half a mile from the mine. 12 men are buried in it. I helped dig 4 of those graves. Nalia made a small sound behind me. I felt her grip tighten on my coat. I wrote it all down, Obadiah said. Names, dates, where the bodies are. I left the papers with a man I trust at the marshal's office in Stillwater. Sealed envelope. He has instructions to give it to anyone who comes asking with the right words. What words? Peach Orchard. I almost laughed. It wasn't a laugh that came from anything good. And the mine? I asked. The mine is on Apache land. Has been from the start. The Treaty of 1868 made that land Apache by federal law. Renwick's been violating federal law every day for 9 years. I thought about Tobias Reed Jr., 16 years old, skinny as a fence rail, sent out on a routine patrol 2 years ago. My old hand, I said. The boy. They told me a hunter shot him by accident. Obadiah didn't look at me when he answered. Wasn't a hunter, Jed. The boy got too close to the northern ridge, saw a wagon coming back from the mine at night. He started asking questions. Renwick handled it the way he handles everything. The world seemed to narrow down to a single point. For 2 years I had carried that boy's death. I had let it grind me down to nothing. I had ridden the territories like a ghost because I believed I had been careless with the life of Tobias Reed's grandnephew. I hadn't been careless. I had been used. Renwick had needed someone to take the blame, and the foreman with a haunted past had been perfect. A man already broken. A man who would punish himself harder than any court ever would. Something cold and clean settled in my chest. It wasn't rage. Rage burns hot. This was different. This was the feeling a man gets when he finally sees the shape of the trap that has held him for years. Why are you telling me now? I said quietly. Obadiah looked at me for the first time in a long stretch. Because I'm dying, Jeremiah. Lungs are giving out. 6 months at the most. I can't testify. I'd never make it to a federal court, but you can. And the woman behind you can. And the papers I left in Stillwater can. Together, that's enough to hang Augustus Renwick. He reached into his saddlebag, took out a heavy box of .44 caliber Colt cartridges. He tossed it across to me. I caught it with one hand. 24 rounds, he said. You're going to need them. I checked my count. 6 in the Colt, 12 in the Winchester, 24 from Obadiah, plus 6 in another loop on my belt. 48 total. The odds were getting better. Then Obadiah did something I didn't expect. He turned in his saddle and looked at Nalia for the first time since we'd started riding. He looked at her a long time. His eyes filled up with water. Forgive me, he said softly, in a voice that had gone thick. Forgive an old man, but you have your mother's eyes. Nalia went very still behind me. You knew my mother? Obadiah Finch blinked the water out of his eyes. He took a long breath. The kind of breath a man takes before he says something he has been carrying for a long time. Your mother's name was Eleanor May Whitfield. She was the wife of a federal judge from Boston. She was 27 years old when she died. You have her eyes exactly. The sound that came out of Nalia was small and broken. My mother was Apache. My mother died of fever when I was a baby. That's what they told you, Obadiah said gently. That's what they had to tell you, to keep you safe. His old hands were shaking on the reins. I was a younger man then, 42 and still strong in the saddle. I worked as a guide for wagon trains coming west. In the spring of 1854, I guided the Whitfield party from St. Louis, 12 wagons, 42 souls. They were going to homestead a section of land in the Ruby Valley. The judge had bought the rights legal and proper from the territory. He looked at me when he said the next part. There was another party that wanted that land, a rancher named Augustus Renwick. He had filed a competing claim. A federal court ruled against him. He didn't take it well. I felt Nalia's hands clench in my coat. The wagon train was attacked at dawn on the morning of June 9, 1854, Obadiah said, at a place called Apache Wash. The raiders wore Apache paint, but they weren't Apache. They were white men hired by Augustus Renwick. I know because I survived. I was the only adult who survived. I was knocked out by a rifle butt and left for dead in the brush. When I came to, everyone was gone. All the bodies, all the wagons. They burned everything. Everyone died? I asked. Everyone except one, a little girl, 6 years old, the judge's daughter, Eleanor May, named for her mother. Her parents had hidden her in a small box under the wagon seat. The raiders missed her. Nalia was crying without sound now. I could feel her tears soaking through the back of my shirt. A real Apache hunting party found her 2 days later, Obadiah said. An old chief named Sky Walker. He took her home. He raised her as his own. He gave her a new name, in his own language, to protect her. Because he understood even then that the men who had killed her parents were white men, and that those men would come back if they ever knew she had survived. My father, Nalia whispered. Skywalker. He saved your life, Obadiah said. He has loved you for 22 years. He is your father. Don't ever doubt that. But your blood mother and father are buried in an unmarked grave at Apache Wash. And the man who ordered them killed is sitting right now in a big white house 30 miles south of here counting his money. I think I understood in that moment why the desert had brought me to this woman. It hadn't been chance. Augustus Renwick had killed her parents in 1854. He had paid Cyrus Vance to kill Tobias Reed in 1862. He had killed Tobias Reed Jr. in 1874, and now he was trying to kill Nalia herself, because she was the one living witness to a crime 22 years old. He had been pulling threads of my life and her life since before either of us understood what was happening. A rifle shot cracked across the broken rock. Obadiah Finch jerked in his saddle. A red bloom appeared on the front of his old Union coat. Cyrus had found us. Obadiah went off his horse slow, like a man laying himself down. I had the Winchester up and was firing toward the high ground before he hit the dirt. Nalia was already down behind a boulder. The old man crawled 6 feet to a hollow at the base of the rock and lay there breathing in shallow drags. I counted 3 muzzle flashes from the rocks above. Cyrus had brought help, more than I'd hoped. I dropped 2 of them with the Winchester, the third pulled back. There was a long silence. Then the sound of horses moving north, retreating to regroup. I crawled to Obadiah. The wound was high in his chest. He was bleeding bad. Sacramento, he whispered. His voice was already going thin. I sent a wire 2 weeks ago. 3 federal marshals, real ones. They'll be in Stillwater by Friday. Show them the papers. Friday, I said. That was 3 days away. And Jeremiah. His old hand came up and gripped my wrist with surprising strength. The box. Under the bed. Carson City. Marigold Dawson? She's not who you think. A faint smile crossed his lips. She's Tobias Reed's daughter. Grown. The little girl from the letter in his pocket. The drawing of the cat. She kept the name Dawson because she married a man named Dawson at 16, and he died in the war too. The boy you trained, Tobias Jr., he wasn't her son. He was her cousin's boy. She took him in when his folks died of the cholera, but she raised him like he was her own. I could not speak. The money you've been sending, Obadiah said. She's been keeping it. All of it. In a wooden box under her bed. She told me once. She said she was waiting for the day a man came who could spend it on the right thing. His grip on my wrist loosened. Jeremiah. His eyes were already going somewhere far. The right thing. Spend it on the right thing. He breathed out, long and slow, and did not breathe in. Obadiah Finch died with his hand on my wrist and the morning sun on his face. I closed his eyes. Nalia came and knelt beside me. She put her hand on the old man's shoulder. She said something soft in a language I did not know. A blessing, a goodbye, a thank you. Then she stood up. Jed. Yes. We have to go to Carson City. I looked up at her. She was a woman who had lost her husband 3 days ago, who had learned an hour ago that her parents were strangers who had died 22 years before, who had just watched the man who told her this die in her arms. She was steady as iron. Marigold Dawson is your only living tie to the man who shaped your life, she said, and she's been waiting 24 months for you to come and take that money back. We need her testimony. We need that letter from her cousin's boy. Whatever's in that box, we need it before Friday. I stood up. I looked south, where Cyrus had retreated. He would be back, with more men. I looked north, where Stillwater lay, where 3 federal marshals would arrive in 3 days. I looked west, where Carson City lay. 2 days hard riding, a man with 3 roads and a clock running on all of them. I thought of Tobias Reed in the peach orchard. I thought of Tobias Jr. in the northern range. I thought of a 6-year-old girl in a wagon box at Apache Wash. I thought of a wooden box under a bed with 24 months of silver coin in it. I thought of Augustus Renwick in his White House, counting. I made the call. Carson City, I said. Then Stillwater. We finish this in 3 days or we don't finish it at all. I dragged Obadiah's body into the rocks and covered him with stones. It was the best I could do. I told myself I would come back for him when this was done. I meant it. Nalia climbed up behind me on the buckskin. The old man's gray horse stood dumb beside us. I cut the saddle off it and turned it loose. It would find water on its own. We rode west. Behind us, somewhere in the broken country, Cyrus Vance was already moving again. I had no way to know it then. But the next time I saw him would be in a marshal's office at dusk, with a thunderstorm building over the western mountains. And by then, I would have a choice to make I had not yet imagined. We pushed the horse hard for the rest of the afternoon and into the evening. By dusk, the buckskin was lathered and stumbling. I knew that gait. He had maybe an hour left in him before he went down. I pulled up on a rise above a shallow basin where a thin creek ran through cottonwoods. We rest here tonight, I said. Push on at first light. Nalia slid down. She was unsteady on her feet, but she didn't say a word. She walked the horse to the creek and began rubbing him down with handfuls of dry grass while I gathered wood. I watched her work. She moved the way her people had taught her. Slow, careful, nothing wasted. She did not look like a woman who had just learned her name was Eleanor Whitfield. She did not look like a woman whose husband had been dead 4 days. She looked like a woman doing the next thing, then the next. I built a small fire in a hollow where the light would not show beyond the rim of the basin. I made coffee. I cooked the last of the beans. We ate without speaking. The stars came out one by one above the cottonwoods. I watched her across the fire. The flames threw shadows up across her face. She looked older in the firelight, or maybe younger. I couldn't tell. The light kept moving. After a long silence, she said, "Why are you helping me, Jed?" I had been waiting for the question. I had not known she would ask it tonight, but I had known she would ask it. I drank the last of my coffee. I set the tin cup down on the stone beside my boot. Because I owe a debt I can't pay any other way. To my husband? No. I looked into the fire. The pine knots popped. Somewhere up the basin, a night bird called. In April of 1862, I said, in a peach orchard in Tennessee, a man named Tobias Reed surrendered to a Confederate scout. The scout was a man named Cyrus Vance, the same man chasing you now. I was 20 feet away. My rifle was empty. My pistol was on the ground. By the time I could have reached either, Tobias was dead. That was war. That's what I told myself for 13 years. I could feel her watching me, but I could not look at her yet. 2 years ago, Tobias Reed's grandnephew came to work for me on the Renwick Ranch. 16 years old. Came west because his aunt, Tobias's daughter, had nowhere else to send him. I tried to send him home. She wrote and asked me to keep him. I kept him. I taught him. Tobias Jr. He died on a routine patrol in the northern range. They told me a hunter's stray bullet had killed him. I believed them. I let myself believe them. Renwick blamed me and fired me. I let him, because part of me believed I deserved it, that I'd let another Reed die because I wasn't paying attention. I looked up at her then. Every month for 2 years, I sent $12 to that boy's family. To a woman named Marigold who took him in when his folks died of the cholera. I thought I was paying for the boy's funeral. I thought I was buying a little forgiveness. I never wrote a long letter. I never asked for a kind word back. I just sent the coin, and every month she let it sit in a bank in Carson City and would not touch it. And now you know she's the daughter of the man Cyrus Vance shot. Now I know she's the daughter of the sergeant who shaped me into the man I am. And I know Renwick had her cousin's boy killed too. And I know the debt I've been trying to pay for 2 years was never mine to pay. It was Renwick's. The fire popped between us. I have spent 14 years, I said, believing I let one good man die, and 2 years believing I let his blood kin die after him. And it turns out neither one was my fault. They were both murdered by the same man, and I let him use my guilt to keep me silent. Nalia was quiet a long time. Then she did something I did not expect. She reached across the fire. Her hand crossed the small space between us. She laid it on the back of my hand, just for a moment, long enough to feel her skin against mine. Then she drew it back. She did not speak. I did not speak either. We sat there for a long time, two strangers who were no longer strangers, the fire dying down between us, the stars wheeling overhead, the night birds calling out across the basin. I will not lie to you. I have lived a hard life and I am not given to soft moments. But that quiet, across that small fire, was the most important moment of my 43 years on this earth. It was the first time since Shiloh that I felt the ghost in my head go quiet. We slept in shifts. I took the first watch. She took the second. When she woke me at 3 in the morning, she did not speak. She just touched my shoulder and pointed at the saddle. I rolled up. She lay down. By the time the eastern sky was gray, we were back on the horse. We rode into Carson City a little after noon on the second day. Carson City was bigger than Stillwater. 3 churches, a telegraph office, 2 banks, a federal mint that hummed with the sound of stamping silver coin. Marigold Dawson lived in a boarding house on the east end of town, a 2-story clapboard building painted white once, gone gray with weather. A vegetable garden along the south wall, a sign on the front porch that said, "No drink, no tobacco rooms by the week." I tied the buckskin to the rail. I helped Nalia down. She had wrapped a borrowed shawl around her shoulders to cover the deerskin. We did not look like respectable visitors, but we did not look like trouble either. I knocked on the front door. The girl who answered was 16 years old. Brown hair in a loose braid, apron stained with flour. She had a smudge of soot on her cheek from cleaning a stove. She looked up at me and her eyes went wide. "Mr. Holloway? How do you know my name? You sent 24 money orders to my mother. Pemberton always wrote your name on them in his careful little hand. I have read them all." I did not know what to say to that. "My name is Hannah Dawson," she said. "Tobias Reed Jr. was my cousin. He came to live with us when I was 13, after his folks were taken by the sickness. I called him brother because he was that to me. Come in, both of you. You should not stand on the porch." The front parlor was small and tidy and smelled of bread baking, a black stove in the corner, a worn rag rug, a Bible open on a side table. A daguerreotype on the mantel showed a young woman holding a little girl on her lap. The young woman had a strong jaw and tired eyes. Hannah led us into a back room. A woman sat in a straight-backed chair by a window, a quilt across her knees. She was 52 years old, but she looked 70. Her hair was almost white. Her cheeks were sunken. A small bottle of laudanum sat on the table beside her. She turned her head when we came in. She looked at me. She did not speak. But her face changed in a way I cannot describe. It was not joy. It was not anger. It was something older than both. Something like recognition. "You came," she said. "I came," I said. Hannah brought a chair. I sat down across from Marigold Dawson, who was the daughter of Tobias Reed. "I owe you 14 years of an apology," I said. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "And I have owed you an apology for 2 years and I never wrote it. So we are even." "Marigold." "Hannah," she said, not taking her eyes off me. "Go and get the box." Hannah went up the stairs. I heard her footsteps on the boards above us. I heard the scrape of a heavy thing being pulled out from under a bed. Then the footsteps came back down. She set a wooden box on the small table between us. It was about the size of a family Bible, plain pine, a simple iron clasp. Marigold opened it. Inside, on top of a folded cloth, lay neat stacks of silver dollars. 24 stacks. I knew without counting. 12 coins each. 288 silver dollars. Underneath the cloth, there were papers. Marigold lifted them out one by one. The first was a letter from her father, Tobias Reed, written from a camp in Tennessee on the 2nd of April, 1862, 4 days before he died. I had to look away when I saw his hand. The second was a letter from me, the first one I had ever sent her, telling her how the boy she had raised had died and that it was my fault. The third was a letter from Tobias Reed Jr. himself, postmarked the week of his death, Carson City, Nevada Territory. She handed the third letter to me. "Read it," she said. "I have read it 100 times. It is yours now." The boy's handwriting was neat. He had practiced. He had written, "Dear Aunt Marigold, I hope this letter finds you well, and that your cough is better. I have been working at the Renwick Ranch for almost 2 years now, under Mr. Holloway, and I want to tell you he has been the best man to me a boy could hope for. He has been like an uncle, and more than that. Aunt Marigold, I am writing to tell you something I have learned that I do not know what to do with. There is a wagon road that runs from the northern hills to the back of the main house. It is used only at night. I followed it 3 nights ago, and I saw a wagon come back from the hills with 2 strong boxes in it and 4 armed men. The strong boxes were heavy. I could not see what was in them, but I think it is gold. I have not told Mr. Holloway because I do not want to put him in danger. I am going to ride out tomorrow and try to find the place where the wagons come from, so I will have proof. If something happens to me, Aunt Marigold, please tell Mr. Holloway it was not his fault. He warned me a year ago that there were things on this ranch I should not look into, and I did not listen. He is a good man. Tell him that for me. I love you. Tobias. I read it twice. I folded it. I gave it back to her. My hands were not steady. He wrote me too, Marigold said quietly. But that is the part that matters. The part for you. He thought it was his fault for not listening to me. It was no one's fault but Renwick's. I knew that the day the letter came. But I did not know how to write to you. I did not know what to say. So I let your money sit. I told myself I was waiting for the right time. The truth is, I was a coward. You were not a coward. She closed her eyes for a long moment. There is more, she said. Tobias also wrote a name. At the very bottom. He had heard it from one of the older hands. He thought it was the name of the man who organized the wagon trips from the mine. He wrote, "This man came down from the hills 2 weeks ago and stayed at the main house, and his name is Cyrus Vance." I had stopped breathing. Cyrus Vance was at the Renwick main house 2 weeks before the boy was killed. That is what he wrote. The pieces fell into place with the clean, small click of a revolver cylinder. Cyrus Vance had been working for Augustus Renwick for years, probably since the war ended. Renwick had paid him $500 in gold to murder Tobias Reed in 1862 because Tobias had been sent to scout that valley and had reported back on rumors of gold. After the war, Renwick had brought Cyrus west. Cyrus had run security on the mine. He had killed 12 Apache workers. He had killed Tobias Reed, Jr. Now he was riding hard to kill Nalia, the last living witness to a crime committed in 1854. The same hand had pulled the trigger on 3 generations. I looked at Nalia. She was standing by the doorway, very still. Eleanor, I said. The name felt strange in my mouth. Nalia, she corrected gently. Skywalker named me. That is my name. The other was the name of a child who died in a wagon at Apache Wash. All right. Nalia. I turned back to Marigold. Ma'am, I have to ask you something hard. There are 3 federal marshals coming into Stillwater day after tomorrow. They are coming because an old man named Obadiah Finch sent them a wire 2 weeks ago. Obadiah is dead. Cyrus Vance killed him yesterday. We are going to need you to come with us to Stillwater and tell those marshals what is in this box. We are going to need Hannah to bring her cousin's letter and tell them how she got it. Without your testimony, Renwick walks free. Marigold Dawson looked at me. Her old gray eyes did not waver. Mr. Holloway, I have been waiting 2 years for a man to come and tell me that the money in that box could buy something other than my own grief. You tell me it can buy justice for my father and for the boy I raised. You will not have to ask me twice. She turned to her daughter. Hannah, hitch the wagon. The roan, not the gray. Pack 3 days of food. We leave at first light. Hannah nodded. She went out the back without a word. Marigold looked at me one more time. Take the box, Mr. Holloway. All of it. Do what is right with it. I lifted the box. It was heavier than I had expected. 288 silver dollars and 3 letters and the truth of 14 years. I stood up. Ma'am, I said, I will not let this be for nothing. I know you won't, she said. I knew that the first month you sent the money. You are not a man who does things for nothing. You are a man who does things until they are finished. We slept that night in the boarding house. Nalia had her own room. I slept with my boots on, the Colt under the pillow, the Winchester across the foot of the bed. I did not sleep much. Sometime past midnight, I heard a soft sound at my door. Nalia was standing there in a borrowed nightshirt, the lamplight from the hallway throwing her shadow long across the floor. She did not come in. Jed? Yes. Tomorrow we ride into something bad. Yes. If I do not come out of it, I want you to know one thing. Tell me. 22 years ago, an old man on a horse pulled a 6-year-old girl out of a wagon and gave her a new name and a new family and a new life. He did not have to. He chose to. You did the same thing for me 3 days ago in a dry wash. You did not have to. You chose to. That is what a man is. It is the only thing a man is. Thank you, Jeremiah Holloway." She turned and went back to her room. I did not sleep at all after that. We rolled out at first light in a small caravan. Marigold and Hannah in a covered wagon pulled by the roan mare. Nalia and me on the buckskin alongside. The wooden box sat under the wagon seat, wrapped in an oilcloth. The road from Carson City to Stillwater ran 120 miles east through high desert and low pine country. In a wagon, with a stop for water and one short night, it was 2 days hard. We had 2 days exactly before the federal marshals were due in Stillwater. I knew Cyrus Vance would be on the road somewhere ahead of us. I told the women at the breakfast table that morning, plain and simple. I said there was a man who would try to stop us before we reached the marshals. I said he was professional and patient, and that he had probably killed more men than any of us had met in our lifetimes. I said if at any point I told them to get into the wagon bed and lie down, they were to do it without question. Marigold buttered a piece of bread. She looked at me over the top of her spectacles. "Mr. Holloway, my father survived Bull Run, Antietam, and Fredericksburg before he was killed at Shiloh by a coward. My husband died at Gettysburg. The boy I raised was murdered in a draw because he saw too much. Do not for one moment think you are telling me anything new about how men die in this country." She took a bite of bread. "Eat your eggs, Mr. Holloway. We have a long road." Hannah looked across the table at me with an expression I could not read. I ate my eggs. We made good time the first day. The road was dry and the roan was fresh. Nalia rode out front a 1/4 mile, scouting. She had insisted. She said her people had taught her to read country as well as any man, and she could see Cyrus before he saw us. I did not argue. Twice, she came riding back to flag a slow halt. Once because of dust on the southern horizon, which turned out to be a stagecoach. Once because of buzzards over a ridge, which turned out to be a dead steer. We camped the first night in a draw with cottonwoods and a spring. I built no fire. We ate cold biscuits and jerky. Hannah sat beside her mother and read aloud from the Bible in a quiet voice. The 23rd Psalm, the Valley of the Shadow. I checked my weapons in the dark, 6 in the Colt, 12 in the Winchester, 18 rounds of .44 caliber Colt left in the box from Obadiah, plus 6 in another loop on my belt, 42 total. It would have to be enough. The second day was where it went bad. We were 30 miles from Stillwater. The country had opened up into a wide, flat valley with ridges to the north and south. The road ran straight through the middle. Bad country for an ambush in some ways. A man could see for miles. But also bad country for the ones being ambushed because there was nowhere to go. Nalia rode back at mid-morning with her face set hard. 3 riders, she said, on the southern ridge, watching. They have not moved in 20 minutes. Just 3? Just 3. But there could be more in the rocks beyond. I looked at the southern ridge. Heat shimmered. I could not see them, but I trusted her eyes. "Can we get off this road?" "Not in the wagon. There is a wash a mile ahead that cuts north. We could leave the wagon and ride. 2 on the buckskin, 1 on the roan. Hannah behind me." I shook my head. "We are not leaving the wagon. The box is in the wagon. The box is the case. Without it, we have nothing for the marshals." I thought for a long 10 count. "All right, here is what we do. Nalia, you ride 100 yards ahead of the wagon. If they come, they will come in close because a long shot from the ridge would alert anyone on the road. Marigold, you drive the team straight. Do not whip them. Do not run. Run is when they catch you. Steady is when they hesitate. Hannah, you get in the wagon bed under the canvas with the box and a blanket over you. Do not come out for any reason." "And you?" Marigold asked. "I ride drag, 100 yards behind. If they come down off the ridge, I will see them first. I will draw them onto me before they get to the wagon. With any luck, they will commit before they realize the box is not on me. You will be 1 man against 3. I will be 1 man with a Winchester on a moving horse against 3 men coming downhill. The angle favors me more than it favors them, and they want the box. They will hesitate. I will not. It was not a great plan, but it was the plan. We did it. The wagon rolled on at a steady walk. Nalia ranged ahead, the silver pendant tucked under her dress, her face turned to the southern ridge. I dropped back. The buckskin felt the tension in my legs and tossed his head. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. The valley was hot and silent. A meadowlark called somewhere in the sage. Then the three riders came off the ridge at a hard angle, not from due south, from the southwest, cutting toward the wagon's path, not toward me. They had figured the box was in the wagon. Of course they had. Cyrus Vance was a professional. I touched my heels to the buckskin. I came up on them at a hard gallop from the rear left flank. 3 men. I did not see Cyrus among them. Eli Vance was in the lead, his spotted mare flying, 2 strangers behind him. Eli saw me coming and slowed his mare to turn and meet me. The other 2 kept on toward the wagon. I had the Winchester up and across my saddle before Eli's mare had finished turning. I fired once. The round took him high in the chest. He went off the mare in a slow tumble that ended in dust and stillness. The fastest gun in Nevada, killed by a moving rifle shot at 60 yards. I did not feel a thing. I rode past him without looking down. The other 2 had reached the wagon. One was on the right side, leaning toward the canvas. Nalia came in from his blind side at a gallop with a knife she had taken off Eli's brother in the line shack 2 nights before. She drove the knife into his thigh and pulled him off his horse before he could turn. He hit the road and his head bounced once, and he did not get up. The third man went around the rear of the wagon and raised a pistol toward Marigold on the wagon seat. I shot him out of the saddle from 100 yards. It was the longest shot I have ever made in my life, and the cleanest. The bullet took him in the side of the head. He was dead before the ground came up to meet him. The valley went silent. The roan mare stood quietly in her traces. Marigold sat on the wagon seat with the reins in her hands and her face like stone. Hannah lifted the canvas and looked out, white as a winter morning. Nalia sat on her horse with the bloody knife in her hand and her eyes closed for a long second. I rode up to the wagon. "Anyone hit?" "No," Marigold said. "Anyone hurt?" "No." I looked at the 3 bodies in the dust. Eli Vance, 2 strangers, none of them Cyrus. "Where is he?" I said. Nalia looked east, toward Stillwater. "He is ahead of us." "Yes." "He knows we are coming. He knows the marshals are coming. He is going to make his stand at Stillwater itself." "Yes." I thought of the marshal's office in Stillwater. The sealed envelope from Obadiah Finch. The deputy who held it. The deputy who knew the words. Peach Orchard. I thought about the marshal himself. A man named Nathaniel Boone. I had met him only twice in my life, briefly when I was a foreman. He had seemed honest enough, quiet, careful, the kind of badge that did not draw attention. A bad feeling moved through me. A man like Cyrus Vance did not show his face in a town with a federal marshal unless he knew the marshal, unless he had reason to know the marshal would not arrest him on sight. "Marigold," I said, "how much do you know about Marshal Nathaniel Boone?" The old woman thought a moment. "He has been the federal marshal in Stillwater for 8 years. Quiet man. Comes from Ohio, I think. Never married. Goes to the Methodist church. Never makes trouble. Never has trouble. 8 years. About that. Almost the same time Augustus Renwick has been mining gold off Apache land." She looked at me. "Oh," she said. "Yes, we rolled the bodies off the road into the brush. We picked up Eli Vance's mare and tied her to the back of the wagon. We rode on." Stillwater appeared on the eastern horizon 2 hours before sunset. A small, dark cluster of buildings against a broad plain. Smoke from the cook stoves rose in thin gray columns. Somewhere in that town, Cyrus Vance was waiting. Somewhere in that town, 3 federal marshals from Sacramento would be arriving the next morning. Somewhere in that town, A marshal named Nathaniel Boone was sitting at a desk with a sealed envelope in his strongbox, counting Renwick's money. And somewhere south of that town, in a big white house, Augustus Renwick was about to find out his life had finally come due. I checked my Colt one more time as we rode in. 6 rounds. It was not enough, but it was what I had. We did not ride into Stillwater openly. A mile out, I called the wagon to a stop in a stand of cottonwoods along a creek. I told Marigold and Hannah they were going to stay there with the wagon and the box until I came back for them. I said it was not a request. Marigold did not argue. She was tired in a way that went past her bones. She said she would mind the box with her father's old service pistol on her lap. I checked the pistol. It was a Remington .44 from '63, clean, loaded. She handled it like a woman who had handled it before. "My father taught me," she said. I figured. Nalia and I rode the last mile alone. We came in through the back lots, behind the livery, and tied our horses in an alley behind the old feed store. Nalia pulled her shawl up. I pulled my hat low. We walked. Stillwater at dusk was a quiet town. Lamps coming on in windows, a piano playing in the saloon at the far end of Main Street, a few hands moving down the boardwalk toward dinner. The marshal's office was at the north end of Main Street, a small wooden building with a star carved into the door. The light was on inside. I told Nalia to wait in the alley across the street with my Winchester. If anyone came out other than me, she was to back away into the dark and ride for the cottonwoods. She nodded once. I crossed the street. I stood at the door of the marshal's office for a long moment. I listened. I heard one set of footsteps inside. Just one. Pacing slow. I drew the Colt. I held it down along my leg. I opened the door. Marshal Nathaniel Boone was sitting behind his desk with his boots up on it and a glass of whiskey at his elbow. He was reading a newspaper. He looked up. He saw me. His face did not change. "Holloway," he said, "we have been expecting you." He set the newspaper down very slowly. His hands stayed on the desk. "Where is Cyrus?" I said. "In the back room, cleaning his rifle." "Tell him to come out. Empty-handed." Marshal Boone raised his voice. Not loud, conversational. "Cyrus, he's here. Come out empty." There was a pause. Then the door to the back room opened. Cyrus Vance walked out with both hands raised. The scar on his face caught the lamplight. He smiled when he saw me. "Holloway, I told Boone you'd come straight here. Boone thought you'd run for the federal marshals first. I told him you've got a sense of order to you, like to put things in the right pile." "The right pile," I said. I kept the Colt on Cyrus. I spoke to Boone without taking my eyes off him. "Marshal, there is a sealed envelope in your strongbox left here by a man named Obadiah Finch. The envelope has my name on it. The words to release it are Peach Orchard. Open the strongbox, now." Boone did not move. "That envelope was opened a long time ago, Mr. Holloway. The contents were destroyed. There is nothing in the strongbox but money." I had expected that. "Marshal Boone, 3 federal marshals from Sacramento are arriving in this town tomorrow morning by stagecoach. They were summoned by Obadiah Finch by wire 2 weeks ago. They are coming whether you destroyed the envelope or not. They are coming whether you arrest me or not. They are coming whether you shoot me right now in this office or not." Boone's jaw tightened. He had not known about the marshals. Cyrus had not told him, or Cyrus had not known either. I kept going. And here is the second thing. Mrs. Marigold Dawson and her daughter Hannah are sitting in a wagon a mile west of this town with a wooden box. In the box is a letter from Tobias Reed, Jr., dated the week of his murder, naming Cyrus Vance as Renwick's man. They are also prepared to testify that for the past 2 years I have sent $288 silver to that family in payment for a death I did not cause. That money is now evidence. Boone's eyes flickered toward the strongbox, a man calculating. I kept going. "And the third thing, Marshal. The woman waiting across the street with my Winchester is Eleanor May Whitfield. the only living survivor of the Apache Wash Massacre of June 9th, 1854. She knows your boss organized the killing of her parents to take their land. She has the silver pendant of the Apache band that raised her, which proves federal treaty rights to the land Renwick has been mining for 9 years. I let that settle. Marshal Boone, you have one chance to come out of this with your life, not your job, not your reputation, your life. Drop your gun on the desk and walk out the back door and ride east. Do not stop until you are in Wyoming. Do that, and I will not tell the marshals tomorrow what I know about you. Do not do that, and one way or another, you are finished tonight. Boone's hands had come off the desk. Cyrus Vance had been quiet during all of this. He was watching me with an expression I had never seen on his face before. He almost looked impressed. "Holloway," he said quietly, "I always wondered what kind of man you turned into after Shiloh. I have to admit, I did not expect this. Hands up, Cyrus." "They are up. They are not." He smiled. His right hand had drifted down toward his belt. I shot him. The .44 caliber round took him in the right shoulder, spinning him sideways. He hit the wall and slid down it, leaving a long red smear. His pistol came out of his belt and clattered to the floor. He sat there with his back against the wall, panting, the smile gone. I kicked the pistol away. I kept the Colt on him. "Marshal Boone, your turn. Your gun, on the desk, now." Boone's eyes had gone to the strong box in the corner. I saw him think about it. I saw him do the math. Cyrus down, me with 5 rounds left and a clean shot from 6 feet away. He did not go for it. He pulled his pistol slow, with 2 fingers on the grip, and laid it on the desk. "Step away from the desk." He did. "Now sit on the bench by the window and put your hands flat on your knees." He did that too. Cyrus Vance was bleeding on the floor. Not fast. I had hit shoulder, not heart. He was looking at me with that strange expression still. "You want to know something, Holloway?" "No. You want to know why I shot Tobias Reed in that orchard. The real reason." I had been waiting 14 years to know, but I was not going to give him the satisfaction of asking. "I do not want to know anything from you, Cyrus. You can tell it to a federal judge." He laughed. It turned into a cough. Blood on his teeth. "All right, Holloway. All right. But I will tell it anyway. Because you deserve it. Renwick paid me $500 in gold to find Tobias Reed. He had heard there was a Union scout asking questions about gold in the Ruby Valley. He did not know I was going to find him in a peach orchard surrendering. That was a gift from God. It was easy. The smile was for free. I threw that in for myself. I did not move. And the boy? Same money, different year. He started asking the same questions. The Reeds are unlucky people. 2 generations of them keep walking into the same gold. And the Whitfields? He grinned through bloody teeth. Before my time. Renwick used different men in 54. I came on in 62. But the story is the same one. Renwick has been killing people who get in the way of his land for over 20 years. You think that is unusual? Look at any big rancher in this country. Look at any big railroad. Every fence in the West is built on a grave. Maybe, but not every rancher has a man like you working for him. Plenty do. You just do not see them, Holloway, because men like me are good at not being seen. He coughed again. He looked at his own blood on his hand. "Old Peach Orchard," he said softly. "Long way from here." He was not going to die from the wound. The marshals would have him in the morning. He would hang in Sacramento by Christmas. I turned to Boone. "You, up, walk to the cell, now." He walked. I locked him in his own cell with his own keys. Cyrus. I dragged into the second cell and locked him in with a rag pressed against his shoulder. I set my Colt on the desk and laid Boone's pistol next to it. I went to the strong box. The key was on Boone's ring. I opened it. There was no sealed envelope. There were $1,100 in gold double eagles. There was a small leather book. I opened the book. It was a ledger. Payments from the Renwick Cattle Company to Marshal Nathaniel Boone. Quarterly. For 7 years. $1,200 a year. He had written it down. The fool had written it down. I closed the book and put it in my coat. I left the gold for the federal marshals to find. I walked out the front door of the marshal's office. Nalia came across the street. She had heard the shot. She had not moved. "It's done," I said. "He's locked up. Boone is locked up. The federal marshals will be here by stage at 10 in the morning." "And Renwick?" I looked south, toward the valley where the Renwick main house sat in lamplight 30 miles away. "Renwick does not know yet. He thinks Cyrus is bringing him your head and that pendant in the morning. He thinks Boone is going to meet the federal marshals and turn them around. And you think he is going to stay in his house and wait for the news." "No. I think when news doesn't come tonight, he is going to start moving. He is going to start running, or he is going to start covering. Either way, by tomorrow night, we may not get him." Nalia was quiet. "Then we go to him tonight," she said. "Just you and me. We do not let him know we are coming." I looked at her. 28 years old, a widow of 4 days, the daughter of a federal judge from Boston, the daughter of an Apache chief. "You do not have to come. I have been coming for 22 years, Jed. I just did not know it." We rode south at full dark. The Renwick main house sat in a wide, low valley 15 miles south of Stillwater. It was a long, white 2-story building with a wide porch all around, a separate stable, a bunkhouse for the hands, a kitchen building behind. Augustus Renwick had built it 20 years ago to look like a piece of Virginia dropped in the middle of Nevada. He had brought the lumber in by wagon from California. He had brought the bricks from Salt Lake City. The chimneys alone had cost him a year of an honest man's wages. We came in on foot. We had left the horses in a draw a mile north and walked the rest. The night was cool and the moon was a thin sliver. There was a thunderstorm building somewhere to the west. I could see the lightning in the clouds along the horizon. We came to the edge of the home pasture and lay down in the grass. The house had 3 lamps lit, 2 on the lower floor, 1 in an upstairs bedroom. The bunkhouse had no light. The hands had been let go for the night. That was strange. Renwick usually kept 4 men awake on rotation. Then I understood. He had sent his hands away. He did not want witnesses for what was coming. He was waiting for Cyrus. He thought Cyrus was bringing Nalia to him. I touched Nalia's arm and pointed at the back porch. She nodded. We crossed the home pasture, low and slow. We came up to the back of the kitchen building and waited. No movement, no sound but the wind picking up before the storm. I went up the back steps of the main house and tried the kitchen door, unlocked. I turned the handle. I pushed it open 6 inches. The kitchen was dark. The cook stove was warm but not hot. The remains of a supper sat on the table. A single plate, a single glass. Renwick was eating alone tonight. I motioned Nalia in behind me. We crossed the kitchen floor on the balls of our feet, through the swinging door into the dining room, through the dining room into the front hall. A door stood open at the far end of the hall. Yellow lamplight spilled across the polished floor. I could hear a clock ticking inside the room, a pen scratching on paper. I drew the Colt. I had reloaded after Cyrus. 6 rounds. I stepped into the doorway. Augustus Renwick sat behind a heavy walnut desk in a study lined with books he had never read. He was 58 years old, silver hair combed back, a starched white shirt, a vest of dark green silk. He was writing in a leather-bound ledger with a steel-nibbed pen. He did not look up at first. He finished his line. He blotted it carefully. He set the pen in its holder. Then he raised his eyes. "Holloway," he said, "I always thought it would be you, in the end. Cyrus said it would be the woman. I said it would be you. I am sorry to be right." I did not point the gun. I held it down along my leg. Nalia stepped into the doorway behind me. Renwick looked at her. His face did not change exactly, but something behind his eyes shifted. It was the look of a man recognizing a portrait he had seen once, a long time ago. "Eleanor," he said softly. "Eleanor May. You grew up." "You knew," she said. "I have known for 22 years. Skywalker thought he hid you. He did not. I have had men in his band off and on for 20 years. I knew the white girl was alive. I knew exactly where you were. I left you alone because killing a child raised by the Apache would have brought the cavalry down on me, and I needed the cavalry to leave me alone. I told myself if you ever came south of the Ruby Valley, I would handle it. Then your husband got too curious about my mine, and here you are." "Why did you kill my parents?" "Because your father had filed a competing claim on land I needed. He won the federal ruling. I had no other recourse." "You had every other recourse. You had law. You had money. You had time." "I had a season, Eleanor. I had to break ground that summer or lose a year of revenue. Your father cost me a year, so I cost him 42 lives, and in the end, I built a fortune, and he is forgotten. That is the world. I did not make the rules. I only learned them." I had heard enough. "Mr. Renwick, there are 3 federal marshals arriving in Stillwater tomorrow morning. Cyrus Vance is in a cell. Marshal Boone is in the cell next to him. I have his ledger of bribes from you for 7 years. I have a letter from Tobias Reed Jr. naming Cyrus as your man. I have a sworn statement coming from Marigold Dawson, the daughter of Tobias Reed. I have a deed pendant proving the mine sits on Apache treaty land. I have a witness account from Obadiah Finch, written before he died, of the burial of 12 men in a ravine half a mile from your mine. And I have her, the daughter of the federal judge you killed." Renwick listened with both hands flat on the desk. When I was done, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into the right-hand drawer of his desk. I almost shot him then. My hand came up, but what he brought out was not a pistol. It was a small silver flask. He set it on the desk. "I have been carrying this since I was a young rancher in my mid-30s, he said. "It belonged to your father, Eleanor. We met at a gathering in Boston in the spring of '54. We had a drink together. He had this flask. It had his initials on it. EFW, Edward Franklin Whitfield. He left it on the table by accident. I picked it up to return it to him the next morning. By the next morning, I had decided to ride west and file a counterclaim on his land. I never gave the flask back. I have carried it for 22 years. He pushed it across the desk toward Nalia. "It is yours." She did not move to take it. "I have carried something else for 22 years, he said, "which I will ask you to believe, even though it does not matter." "What?" "I have known for 22 years that what I did at Apache Wash was the act of a coward. I have known for 14 years that what I paid Cyrus Vance to do at Shiloh was the act of a coward. I have known for 2 years that what I did to the Reed boy was the act of a coward. I have known for 9 years that the men I buried in the ravine north of the mine were honest men, and I was not. I have known all of it. And I have done none of it twice. I have not killed since the boy. I have spent 2 years trying to be a man my father might have respected. It was too late. It was always too late. But I tried." He took a long breath. "There are men who can become better," he said quietly. "I am not one of them. I lacked the courage to start over. I lacked the courage to confess. I lacked the courage to die in a courtroom and be remembered as what I am. So I have one last small courage left, the smallest there is." He opened the left-hand drawer. I had the Colt up and aimed at his forehead before his hand cleared the wood. But he was not going for me. He took out a small Derringer, single barrel, the kind a gambler keeps in his vest. He put the muzzle under his own jaw. "Eleanor," he said, looking only at her, "your father was a better man than I will ever be. I have stolen 45 years of his life and yours. I cannot give them back. I can give you only this. Tell the marshals tomorrow that Augustus Renwick confessed everything to you in this room before he died. Tell them where the ravine is. Tell them where the mine is. Take the land back. Take the gold back. Build a school on it. Do whatever you wish. Only remember when you are old that the last thing the man who killed your parents did was give you back the land." He pulled the trigger. The single small report was almost lost in the first thunder roll of the storm coming over the western mountains. Augustus Renwick slumped sideways in his chair. The pen rolled off the desk and clattered on the floor. The room was very still. Nalia crossed to the desk on legs that did not seem to bend at the knee. She looked down at him. She did not touch him. She picked up the flask. She turned it in her hand. The initials caught the lamplight. EFW. She closed her hand around it. Then she walked out of the room without looking back. I followed her. We sat on the front porch for a long time. The thunderstorm rolled over the valley. The first cold drops of rain hit the wood porch. Lightning lit the fields white and then dark. She held the flask in her lap. "Jed." "Yes." "I have a name now." "Yes." "And a father who is dead and a father who is alive." "Yes." "And land." "Yes." "And nothing else." I waited. "I have you," she said. It was not a question. It was a quiet statement of fact, the way a woman states the weather. "You have me," I said, "for as long as you want." She looked over at me in the lamplight from the doorway. "I want for a long time." The federal marshals from Sacramento rolled into Stillwater on the 10 o'clock stage the next morning. I met them at the depot with Marigold Dawson on one arm and Nalia on the other. Hannah walked behind us with the wooden box in her hands. The whole thing took 11 minutes. I told the head marshal everything. He sent 2 men to the marshal's office to take Cyrus Vance and Nathaniel Boone into custody. He sent a 3rd man south with a deputy to secure the Renwick house. By noon, the news was running through Stillwater like a fire. By sundown, telegraph wires were running it east toward Washington. Within a year, the federal courts had returned the northern Renwick Range to the Apache band of Skywalker, by name, under the Treaty of 1868. The mine was closed and sealed. The gold already taken from it was placed in a federal trust for the band. Cyrus Vance was hanged in Sacramento on the 3rd of February, 1877. Nathaniel Boone was sentenced to 20 years at the federal prison in Detroit and died there in the 7th year. The Renwick estate was broken up and sold. Most of the proceeds went to the families of the 12 men buried in the ravine and to a school built on the edge of the new Apache land, which was named the Edward Whitfield School. Marigold Dawson lived 3 more years. Her cough never got better, and she did not expect it to. She used the $288 silver to send Hannah to a teaching college in Boston. Hannah came back 5 years later and taught at the Edward Whitfield School for the rest of her life. She married a young Apache schoolteacher named Joseph Sky Walker, a grandson of the chief. Their first son they named Tobias. Skywalker himself lived until 1884 and died in his sleep in the lodge he had built with his own hands. Nalia was at his side. He had never told her she was not his daughter by blood. When the federal papers came that proved her birth, he had taken them to the fire and burned them. He had said only one thing: "You are my daughter." The papers do not know that. Now they do not know anything. Obadiah Finch's body I went back for. I buried him on a rise above the basin where he had died. I cut his name into a flat piece of stone with my belt knife. I sat with him a while. I told him the marshals had come. I told him what we had done with what he had given us. I told him he had been a brave old man. I told him I was sorry I had not known him sooner. I have not been to that grave in a long while now, but I will go again before I am done. As for me, I sold the buckskin and bought a piece of land along a creek east of Stillwater. Nalia and I built a cabin on it together with 2 Apache men from her father's band. Then we built a barn. Then we built a small house for Skywalker so he could stay with us in the cold months. Then we built a fenced yard for the children we did not yet have but eventually did. 2 boys. The older one we named Tobias. The younger one we named Edward. I never got rid of my Colt. It hangs on a peg by the front door of the cabin. There is 1 round in it, just 1. I have not loaded any others into it in 15 years. I do not need to. I am 61 years old as I tell this. My hair is white now. My hands are slower. My eyes are not as good as they were. But I sleep through the night without ghosts. I have not had a dream of a peach orchard in 15 years. Some men say justice comes from the last bullet in your gun. I used to believe that. I was wrong. Justice came from a wooden box of silver coins under a widow's bed. Justice came from a 16-year-old girl who read every letter I ever sent. Justice came from an old corporal on a gray horse who carried a confession for 6 months looking for me. Justice came from a sergeant's daughter who waited 2 years for the right man to spend her grief. And justice came from a woman with quiet, weary eyes asking me, in a dry wash on a hot afternoon, whether I was like the others. I told her no. That answer is the truest thing I have ever said. It is the only answer that mattered in the end. The desert did not kill me with silence. It gave me back my voice, and in the giving, it gave me back my life.